This episode of the Power Company Podcast is brought to you by you. It's all about you, made specifically for you, and kept sponsor-free because of you. Thanks for listening and for helping us build this.
As soon as I saw it, I knew that I was like, this is what I want to do. I don't even care if it's a V9. I don't care if it's like a V4. It's like the coolest boulder problem I've ever seen.
What's up, everybody? I am your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to the Not So Average series from the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. In this series, we talk to the regular folks out there, the people just like you. And we try to find out why you're not so average. In this episode, we're talking with 22-year-old climber and friend of mine, Tanner Wilson.
I'm Tanner Wilson. I've been climbing for 4.5 years, almost would be 5 years this summer, and I'm from Miamisburg, Ohio. It's a little town just south of Dayton.
And that's Dayton, Ohio, not Dayton, Tennessee. Lest you think that Tanner's lucky to be close to so much really great climbing. I'm from Ohio, and I understand Tanner's predicament, the predicament of everyone in Ohio who wants to be a boulderer. There's not a whole lot of great bouldering nearby. And Tanner went on his first big road trip this winter, and shortly after, he posted on our Power Company community page on Facebook 5 lessons that he had learned on his trip. And, much like climbing often does, I think there were some life lessons hidden in there. But first, let's talk to Tanner a little about the trip itself.
Well, we went to the Triple Crown at Horsepins. First thing.
Good place to start with destroying your elbows.
Yeah, good place to start destroying your elbows and your skin and your chest and everything, forearms. But we were at Horsepins for a week, stayed throughout the Triple Crown, and then a couple days after that. And then I branched off from all my friends that came down with us.
Yeah.
And we headed to Rocktown. And we were at Rocktown for 4.5 weeks. So it was cool. 5.5 weeks total.
Yeah, and you split apart to some other little areas now and then, right?
Mm-hmm. We went to LRC once, went to Little River Canyon once, and then went to Citadel, which was really cool.
Oh, yeah, I've heard it's cool. I haven't been.
It's sweet. Yeah. It's kind of pebbly, but good climbing. And then we went to Pep Boys 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was really it. We tried to stay exclusive to Rocktown just because there was so much stuff that we wanted to do there.
Yeah.
That we didn't want to go anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Rocktown's pretty much the mecca.
Yeah, Rocktown's pretty badass.
Yeah.
What was your longest climbing trip prior to this one?
I think 8 or 9 days.
Yeah.
I did a tour of the Southeast. We just did the big 3, so we went to Rocktown and Stone Fort and Horsepins.
Right, for 2 or 3 days at each or whatever.
Yep. I think we did 2 days at Rocktown, 2 days at Stone Fort, and then the rest we stayed at Horsepins.
Yeah, so you barely even got to see it.
Yeah, no, we didn't see anything. I didn't even have a Rocktown guidebook when we went, so we were just walking around trying to climb stuff with chalk on it.
Yep.
I knew what the orb was. That was about it.
Yeah, totally. I think that's the way most people come into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you set up in the cool Sprinter van, hashtag van life, that whole thing?
No hashtag van life. I have a pretty beat up 1995 Toyota 4Runner.
Yeah.
And I had all of my stuff on one side. I took the back seats out and laid the backrest down.
Yep.
All of my stuff was on the passenger side and totes, and I had a shelf in there, a tote with drawers.
Right.
And then I had it was barely wider than my shoulders. I almost had to sleep on my side every night, but I had foam in there with a sleeping bag and a blanket and a pillow. That was it. So no hashtag van life. Couldn't stand up in my car.
So you and Connor didn't cuddle at night and all that?
No, he was actually, he had a double-decker thing going on in the back of his Ford Expedition.
Yeah.
So he had this much room between him and the top of his car.
Like a foot between himself and the...
Yeah, but he had everything he needed with him. So it was, he couldn't even sit up. I could at least sit up. But Connor was, when he got in his car, he was going to bed. That was it. He was going to bed or reading a book like this. So,
right in his face.
Yeah.
When Jesse came down, what did you do?
Jesse has a Ford truck.
Yeah.
And she has a camper shell on the back of it. So we put and it was sweet because in my 4Runner, I can't stretch my legs out. Like I would have to put my feet in between my seats to stretch my legs out all the way.
Nice.
And the back of her truck is like 8 feet long. So I immediately took all of my stuff, put it in the back of her truck, and slept in it because I could finally stretch out.
Nice.
I could finally move around. It was nice.
Yeah.
It was definitely cool. Yeah. No big vans. Jesse has her van, but it's in the shop right now.
Yeah, she's got a sweet little bus.
Pretty sweet.
What's her bus's name?
Joy.
Joy, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, that bus is amazing. I might end up stealing it from her. What were you cooking every night?
Yep.
I know you didn't spend a ton of money on this trip, right?
No, I went in to Horse Pens with like $1,600 I had saved up because I originally didn't plan on going on this trip.
Yeah.
So I just saved money for like a month and a half, 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then I spent like $600 or something at Horse Pens. I don't even know on what. Like I bought a ton of food and obviously beer. It's a Triple Crown. If you're not drinking beer, somebody's gonna hand you a beer anyway. So But bought a ton of beer and then like camping was like $100 because we stayed for a week.
It's kind of expensive to camp there.
Oh yeah. But I spent way too much money there, and then I ended up having like I think right around $1,100 when I went to Rocktown. Came home with like $350.
Nice, dude.
So, cooked every night, but definitely didn't eat as much as I probably should have.
Yeah.
My stomach shrank like a whole bunch, I think, because I used to eat a ton, and now I don't eat hardly at all. So in a way, it was good. I lost like 11 pounds.
Nice.
On the trip, so
yeah, down into bouldering shape.
Yeah, got into bouldering shape.
Yeah.
So
hashtag dirtbag diet.
yeah, dirtbag diet for sure.
Most of us want to bounce all over the country on our first road trip and climb everywhere we can. And I think there's some valuable lessons to be learned there as well. But I think it was important for Tanner to spend, this entire month and a half in one general area. Because he came across some ideas that may not have presented themselves had he been spreading his time out to other places. And when Tanner posted on our Facebook page the 5 lessons that he had learned, his number 5 sounded really simple, that crimps aren't actually his weakness. But I think it's important to note that a lot of us in the gym have these perceived weaknesses, and outside. I shouldn't necessarily differentiate, but we have these perceived weaknesses, and when we believe that we're bad at something, sometimes we just won't try that hard.
Really didn't hit me until I did guillotine, that V6.
Uh-huh.
Heinous crimps like for the first 5 moves.
Yep.
I was standing under it. I couldn't see the holds. Like there's chalk on these little nubbins, like fingernail crimps. And I was like, V6 my butt. But I ended up doing it 4 or 5 tries. And that's totally my anti-style.
Right.
Slab, techie, small crimp climbing, not my forte.
Yep.
Ended up doing it really easily, and I was like, those didn't feel that bad.
Yeah.
And then we got on a few other crimpy problems that were easier, and then it really hit me when I did Sherman Photo.
Mm-hmm.
Because I tried Sherman Photo once this past summer, and it was also 90 degrees, but I try not to ever blame the weather unless it's raining. But
at the South at 90 degrees in the summer, you can blame the weather raining all day. Yeah.
But that really, really bad crimp in the middle of the face that you have to lock off on.
Yep.
I could not even touch that. I couldn't even lock off on it. So came home and did some hangboard stuff and went back and did Sherman Photo in less than 10 tries.
Nice.
So that crimp felt great. And it was colder, so that helped. It was sticky.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I realized that, hey, maybe I don't have to avoid things that are super crimpy, because I would normally.
Yeah.
And then Connor would kind of kick my butt into shape and be like, no, get on it. It's not that bad. They're just crimps. Well,
yeah. Good job, Connor.
Good job, Connor. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Well, so why do you think that is? Do you think it's all just because of the hangboarding, or do you think there's something else there that?
I think the hangboarding helped, but I did only hangboard for like 2 months, and it wasn't like a hangboarding plan. Like I would hangboard sometimes I wouldn't. You know, anything helped kind of thing.
Sure.
I think that I was just kind of wussing out, really, and I would hit a bad crimp on a boulder problem, and even though I would latch the hold, I would just drop off. Like, no, I'm not messing with that.
Right.
So
right.
It was a mental thing, I think.
Yeah.
And it sounds silly, like, oh, you're scared of crimps. Well, yeah.
I mean, it
Pretty
happens to
scared
all
of
of us. Most of us let go before we fall off.
Mhm.
You know, I'm definitely guilty of it. I know most people are. Most people that I watch. So I think that's important to learn. You know, and did that develop while you were out there? Do you think?
Yes.
That ability to try hard. You said you were starting to flash 5s all the time, starting to flash 6s. You must have turned on some try hard there.
I seriously did. There's a certain amount of grit that you have to have once you get to a certain grade in bouldering.
Yep.
And I never had that grit. I would never just like grit and bear it, you know.
Yep.
I had never yelled on a boulder problem until this trip. So
wow.
One had never made me scream, and then I screamed on one. Felt great. Huge weight lifted off my shoulders.
I screamed on one.
Yeah.
Felt great.
But I just every time I latch a bad hold now, I just tell myself to grit and bear it. And you know, when you can hear your fingernails cracking on the crimp, you know you're not coming off unless you let go. You're not coming off.
Yep.
So
Totally.
You just got to have that thing in the back of your head.
And that leads us right into Tanner's number 4 point. After dedicating some time to training, Tanner jumped 2 grades from the spring season to the winter season, and he began flashing his previous project grades, which were around V6, low V7. And he realized on this trip that whether it's indoors or outdoors, if you work hard and stop making excuses, that's when progress happens. What were the excuses you were making prior to that?
There was a bunch. I got a whole book of them. But most of the excuses that I had was just, I don't know, being in a gym environment, like at RockQuest or at Urban Crag, where there's tons of people in there all the time.
Yep.
It's really hard to focus. And I would go in and I'd be super psyched on my session. And then I would go in there and I would just end up climbing on whatever and like, oh, that problem looks cool. Let's get on that. Mm-hmm. Or I'd end up talking to people. But now I'm that jerkwad with my headphones in that doesn't talk to anybody.
Right.
So that was my biggest excuse was, oh, well, the gym's going to be here tomorrow. Let me just climb a little bit today. And then tomorrow I'll come back. And then I wouldn't come back.
Sure.
And there were a lot of excuses on why I was falling off of things when really it was just because I would always just tell myself I wasn't strong enough, when in reality I was. I was just falling because I didn't have the right foot, or I wasn't keeping my feet on, or just silly things like that. And it's hard to make yourself like realize, hey, you're being an idiot. Actually, just climb it, buckle down, and try and climb it.
Yeah.
And it was just hard for me to tell myself to do that.
Yep.
And it's like an ego thing, I guess, a little bit.
Sure it is.
Like, oh, this problem's BS because I can't do it.
Right.
So,
that move's just awkward, or
that's
just
a short
doesn't
person.
suit me, or exactly.
So that was another big one. Was just random excuses like that.
Yeah. Did Connor hold you accountable, or people you were climbing with? Did
Connor would sometimes hold me accountable? Yes. I'd be like, oh no, screw that. Like, you're like 1.5 feet shorter than me. Like, of course you can do it. And you'd be like, no. You can do it. You can do it.
Yep.
And then same thing with him. I could just reach a hold. He'd be like, oh, you can just do that because you're tall. I'm like, well, jump.
Yeah, totally.
Do something.
Yep. There's lots of super strong short folks and lots of strong tall guys. So, you both get to use the excuse, and then you both get to say not a chance.
Yeah. I was his Jimmy and he was my Daniel. That's how it went.
That's a good way of looking at it. I like that comparison for a lot of reasons. And not least because if you look at Jimmy and Daniel's climbing, they're not guys who are just out there, projecting at their top level all the time. If you look at Jimmy's 8A scorecard, he's got 948 double-digit boulders. And if you look at Daniel's, up until he stopped logging ascents in 2014, he had 723 double-digit boulders. So those guys are out there getting a lot of volume in and learning to climb really well. And on this trip, Tanner did 89 problems over V2, 40 of which were V5 and harder. And remember, his previous project grade was V6. And he says that kind of mileage changed his climbing. And now he knows he's capable of climbing smooth and efficient like the strong climbers that he admires. And, I wondered if that was something he went into the trip with, the intention of learning to climb smooth and efficient.
You've seen me climb.
Yep.
Plenty of times. I cut feet and I do these weird drop knees everybody calls wonky Tanner beta.
Yeah.
And I do all this stupid stuff that I need to quit doing. And you've told me that, and other people have told me that.
Well, I don't know that you need to quit doing it.
Just need to...
But find the other solutions as well.
Yeah.
I think it's good to have your quirky beta that works for you. Mm-hmm. It's good to know that. It's good to be able to see it and to find it. But I also think it's good to know how to do those solutions that work for most people.
Yep. And I don't know, it was just, I knew that I was climbing like crap. I looked like in the videos that I have of myself.
You didn't look how you wanted to.
No, I looked like I had never climbed a rock before ever in my life. Mm-hmm. It was just, I looked really, really bad. And I realized that, like, looking at my videos from this trip prior to other trips, it was just night and day difference.
Right.
Like, I actually look like I know what I'm doing. I was actually kind of sussing out my beta and, like, reading the route before I would get on. Normally, I'll just get on it and just throw for holds. And if they're good, I'll hold them. If they're bad or if that's not the hold, then I'll fall. I quit doing that, so that was cool. Never been a good flash or on-site climber, and that changed because I kind of learned how to read routes outside.
Yeah. Yeah, you look like, I mean, I watched the video of you doing, I think there was a video of you doing Golden Throttle.
Yeah, that was cool.
And that's a heady problem, you know, you're way up there doing some hard moves, and you looked confident.
I felt good.
You looked like you were climbing really well.
I on-sighted that one, thank God. Never going to do that one again, probably.
Yeah.
But I got on that one, and we threw all the pads down. We had a bunch of pads. I was like, I'm just gonna do it right now, because we were trying to get all of our ticks on the front page. Yeah, it has like the best of the best.
Right, yep.
We were trying to get all of them up to V6.
Nice.
And I think I had like 3 V5s left, and then 4 V6s left to do.
Sweet.
But those ones were just, I don't know why, but we couldn't even touch them.
Yeah. Yep, that happens.
They were extremely hard. But yeah, I got on Golden Throttle, and I got up there, and it just was like, oh, crap, I'm like above the fall zone. Got to chill out. Same thing on Freed's Fall. I had down climb from the top move on that thing like 3 times before over in the summer.
Yep.
And I got on it, and I did it first try this time. I just had to chill out.
Yeah.
I like highballing now.
Yeah, comfort levels changed.
It's nice.
There's absolutely no question that spending those 5.5 weeks in the Southeast bouldering and doing 40 problems V5 and harder made Tanner a better climber. Progress in climbing isn't all about just getting to the next grade. Sometimes it's about mastering the grade that you're at. And, Tanner went into this trip with a big goal in mind initially. And that goal changed, and he made a really mature decision just before he left on his trip, and that's his number 2 point, that sometimes goals can change, and that's okay.
So I started planning this trip like a few months before I actually left.
Right.
First priority was to send the orb, and then that changed right before I went on the trip because I realized that if my main goal is to send the orb, the first 2 weeks, I'm probably just going to be on the orb and on everything around it. I'm going to warm up
Right.
on the same stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to get to see Rocktown like I wanted to. So everything changed, and I wanted to do 100 boulder problems over the grade of V4, well, V4 plus. And I actually came kind of close to that goal, but that goal also changed because I realized that I was just kind of like beating myself into the ground.
Yeah.
Like it was like, okay, let's go to this area and do all the V4s, all the V5s, all the 6s, and all the 7s if we can. And it was just not working out. It was too much hard climbing for me.
Yep. So the hardest thing you'd done prior to the trip was hard 7, easy 8, somewhere around there. And so it was probably a good decision to say, okay, I'm not going to focus entirely on the orb, which is one of the hardest 8s in the South.
Yeah.
In the world, and instead get a bunch of mileage in.
Yes. I realized that I needed to be a good climber.
Yeah.
I was sick of going down on trips, even if it was just a 3-day trip to Stoneford or to Horse Pens.
Yep.
Sick of falling off the same things, not because I was not strong enough to do them, but because I just could not figure them out.
Right.
Like,
Sure.
the feet were not there for some reason. My sequences were all messed up. So I was just getting sick of being just a mediocre climber. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go down here. And for the first 2 weeks, I don't think I got on anything harder than V6.
Yeah.
Just because I would get on a bunch of V4s and V5s with my buddy Connor, and we would climb them slow. We would try and climb them well.
Yep.
And that really worked out because the last 2 weeks of the trip, we kicked ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Whose idea was that to climb them multiple times and climb them really well?
Well, it was kind of we went into it with the same mindset, which
Yeah.
I think really, really helped us out because Connor, he's climbing like V7s. He just got his first 8, and he's been climbing for a little over a year.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Nice.
crushing.
Shout out,
But-
Connor.
Yeah, shout out to Connor. But we talked at Horse Pens about how different we are as climbers. He's, I'm 6'2", huge, +4,
Right.
ape index, and then Connor's
You're a
like
giant.
yeah, well, and then Connor's like 5'6", short. He's really good at techie stuff. I'm really good at like big huggy slopers, compression stuff.
Yep.
So we went in there and we were like, we need to climb a whole bunch of stuff multiple times and try and do it like the other person.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You can't always go out of your way to accomplish certain goals or to keep them set in stone.
Yeah.
And I think more people should realize that and try and put that into action. Because if I would have kept the same goals, I guarantee you my time at Rocktown would not have been as great as it was.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been as productive for sure. It's easy to latch onto a goal like the orb because it's this iconic, amazing boulder problem that sits right there in the front where everybody sees it every day. And, it's the one. It's the one to do there.
It's sweet.
And it's easy to latch onto that. But it very easily could have happened that you spent the whole trip, much like I just did, trying that one boulder, and then it doesn't happen. And then you have to go back and nowhere in there are you getting that month of experience under your belt that you did just get. Yep. So I think the step that you took is the super smart one, in really learning to become an outdoor rock climber. Then you can go into the gym and more effectively train to do the orb.
Yeah.
You'll be able to apply that better the next time you walk out there.
Yep. And goals change, and that's okay.
To be perfectly clear here, I think that Tanner made a really mature decision in switching his goal from this grade-based goal to something more volume-based. Instead of chasing this number, he decided he wanted to be a better climber, and he knew what he needed to do at the moment to get there. But I don't think that's always the answer. Sometimes projecting a single boulder is the answer. It's the thing you need to make advancements in your own climbing. And after this break, we'll hear more about how Tanner, like all of us do, got wrapped up into a project. And we'll also hear the number one lesson that he learned from his trip. What's up, everybody? Chris here. Pardon the interruption. I'll keep this short and sweet. Since this podcast started taking off and we've been growing it, you guys have been asking how you can help out. I've got 3 ways for you. Number 1, you can become a patron. That just means you give a monthly donation to the podcast, $1 and up, and you get something in return. And you can check out what those rewards are at patreon.com/Power Company Podcast. Best of all, we'll keep it sponsor and commercial free for you. Number 2, you can rate us and review us on iTunes. I know it's a pain in the ass to go to iTunes and do all that, but it really helps us out. At least that's what I'm told by the podcast powers that be. And number 3, perhaps the easiest way and the best way to help us out is to share us on your social medias. Anytime you see us post up a new podcast, please share it with your friends. Tag people who will really appreciate it or who need to hear the advice that we're giving. All right, thank you guys, and back to the show. Welcome back. We're here talking with Tanner Wilson, a 22-year-old climber from just outside of Dayton, Ohio, who took his first big road trip, and even though he had spent some time getting stronger in the gym and training, and he had this big goal to do the Orb, one of the most famous V8s in the country. Just before his trip, he changed his goals, and changing those goals, made Tanner a much better climber. And just like all of us do, that led him into getting wrapped up into a project, something he tried on his trip and now is stuck there in the back of his mind.
I've been obsessed with this thing for so long. I've never even seen it in person.
You just saw the videos of it.
Holy crap, that's so cool.
Yep.
It's the coolest line ever.
Was it a rainy day the first day you were there?
It was rainy. It had been raining. I think it had stopped, and then we got there late. It was after Dustin got off work, so it was 4 o'clock, I think.
Cool.
So we went in and put in a night session on everything. But saw Sailor's roof when we walked in, and I about crapped my pants. It was
it's big.
Oh my gosh, it's so big. It's way bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
There's so many moves. It's this giant roof. Why aren't there bolts on it? All this stuff was running through my head.
Yeah.
And I dropped my pad and ran down across the creek. Was standing under it, and I was like, oh man, I got to do this. I got to get on this thing. I don't even care if I can do 2 moves on it. I got to get on it.
Yep.
And I'm definitely not a V9 climber yet. Every V9 that I've ever tried, just chuff right off. Usually can't do more than 3 or 4 moves on them.
Right.
Got on Sailor's roof, and I put together the bottom boulder problem from the start to the weird underclings in the roof.
Yep.
In 4 or 5 tries that night.
Nice.
And was super psyched after that. I was like, wow, I can actually go.
Yeah, it's a cool compression boulder leading up to that roof.
It's my favorite kind of climbing. It's just all the holds are pretty good.
Yep.
But it's just big, hard moves over and over and over again.
Yep.
It's the best thing ever, in my opinion. But got on it and worked it and did well on it and then left. I was like, okay, I'm satisfied with that. Let's go. Came back the next time, and my buddy David was actually working it when we got there, and he's a crusher. He's a superhuman, in my opinion. He's nuts. He did Space Ranger in a koala suit.
I don't even know what Space Ranger is.
Crazy ass trad climb. I think at Tennessee Wall. It's a 512 R-rated trad climb.
Oh, I was thinking of Boulder Problems. Okay.
Nope. And he did it in a koala suit. He's obsessed with koalas. I'm not really sure why, but it's pretty funny. But
it has something to do with trad climbing. It makes you a little nutty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he did it in 3 tries. So I was like, oh crap, now I got to do it.
Yeah.
We had so many pads under, the whole thing was lined with pads. There's no excuse other than the fact that my endurance is pretty piss poor.
Right.
So I got up there and I did the bottom boulder problem, and I fell off of this move that I can do in my sleep 3 times in a row. Got super ticked off, had to chill out for a minute, and then got on it, got to my high point, which is 4 or 5 moves from topping out.
Yeah.
I hit the bad crimps on the roof, came out to the jug, and went to another jug and just totally biffed. Couldn't close my hands. Like, I was just pumped. I tried to rest with like this weird knee bar, like a double knee bar in those underclings on the roof. And I spent more energy trying to get in there than I did getting anything back. So got to my high point and then rested for like 30 minutes, got back on it, fell off like the 5th move. And I was like, all right, I'm done with it. Getting pretty pissed off. I got to chill. And then we went and did a bunch of other stuff, like some 4s and 5s that were there. And everybody was like, you going to get back on it? And I was like, no, I'm not ready for it yet. Like, I know how I'm going to feel when I get to that same high point. Not ready for it.
Yep.
Cannot close my hands. My forearms were like bigger than my thighs. It was just pumped. Like, it was bad. I looked like Popeye. And so now what I'm doing is I'm taking some of your advice that you gave me for training for it. And hopefully it goes here middle to the end of March is when I plan on going down there, given that the temperatures and the weather's good.
Hell yeah. And what we talked about, and, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're not much of a sport climber. Like that's not where your background is at all.
That's where I started, though.
Sure, but it's not where your hard climbing is.
No, not at all.
And that thing is long and pumpy.
Yeah.
So when you approached me, you were like, should I be getting my endurance up and power endurance? Can I train it all at once? What should I be doing? And my thought is, because you're just coming off this trip, your power is high, and your understanding of climbing is high right now. So keeping that power up, I think, is important, especially since you got to the end, and so if you can keep that up, and then on the lead in to going there the month before or whatever, the 3 to 4 weeks before, do some 4x4 type circuits or something where you're getting pumped. They're harder moves, but it's power endurance-y, and then finish it with some juggy steep climbing that's what threw you off.
Yep.
And I know you're capable of doing it. You're probably physically capable of doing it right now, but what that'll do is give you that mental edge to be like, okay, I've been more pumped than this in the gym, and I've climbed harder steep jugs than this while this pumped. So this isn't going to be a problem at all.
Yep.
Because when you're that high off the ground, the slightest little doubt creeps in and you're done.
Yep. You're cutting feet and dropping.
Yeah, totally. You're not willing to take the backsplash, that far onto the
pretty
pad,
big backsplash on that one.
Yeah.
I looked down a few times.
Oh yeah,
when I got out on the roof. It was a little nerve-wracking, but this one thing that I have going for me is I'm not afraid to fall.
Yeah.
Like, I'm notorious for skipping clips in Red River Gorge because I'm too pumped to stop and clip. Like, just get to the chains, run.
Right.
And I got like a 45-second pump clock. If I can get up something in 45 seconds or less, I'm good. But anything longer than that, if I have to rest, I'm toast. I don't get anything back.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and starting with that compression boulder, it takes a lot out of you. Even if it's your style, even if it's something that you did fairly quickly, that's a lot of energy you're spending on the bottom of that boulder problem.
Yeah.
And then you're left with, I don't know, 40 feet of roof climbing?
Close, yeah. I think
something like that.
Probably close to 20 moves after that boulder problem. And that boulder problem is almost 20 moves itself.
Right.
So it is really hard. And everybody's like, Tanner, why did you pick this one to be your project? Like, you may just go to Red River Gorge and sport climb.
Why did you pick it?
Because it's just, as soon as I saw it, I knew that I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I don't even care if it's a V9. I don't care if it's like a V4. It's like the coolest boulder problem I've ever seen. Yeah. Obviously, I want my picture standing on top of it. So
nice.
It's gonna be good one day. I'll get it.
And he will, because he's in it for the right reasons. He really loves the idea of this boulder problem. And even though it doesn't suit his strengths very well, Tanner's very aware of what he needs to do to reach his goals, and he makes good decisions in that department. But his trip back to Salo's roof got thwarted by work. He ended up getting pulled down to Florida for a few weeks and wasn't able to make it back to Chattanooga just yet. And while he was in Florida, Tanner reached out to our Facebook community again and, asked what he could do while he's in Florida to stay in shape. And a couple of Florida climbers reached out and said, hey, here's the gym we climb at. We'd love to hook up. And I think that's what this whole sport is about, the community and, the getting to know new people and being psyched for your partners. And that's the number one thing that Tanner said he learned on this trip was that it wasn't all about him. Sometimes giving up the spotlight and just cheering on your friends can be more rewarding than sending a boulder yourself.
The first time we went to Pep Boys, I had never been, never even thought about going, other than because I saw a video of Sailor's Roof and it looked really cool.
Yeah.
Didn't even know where it was. My buddy Dustin that lives down there, he was like, guys, I got this project at Pep Boys. I haven't tried it in like a year. Let's go. Let's get on it. I was like, okay, cool. It ended up being Riverfront or Riverside, whatever anybody wants to call it.
Which is an amazing boulder.
Oh,
yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah.
It was like one of my favorite ones I did on the whole trip. But Dustin, he just, for some reason, he just could not do it. He's plenty strong.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, man, last time I was here, I tried it in my street shoes. I didn't have pads. Like, let's go get on it. So I didn't know what to expect. I'd never even seen the boulder. So I got like 4 pads on my back. I'm like trucking into Pep Boys, and we walk up, and it's like 12 feet tall.
Yep.
And I just carried all these pads in for no reason, and I was like, man. But Dustin was super, super psyched to have us out there. Like, he was so excited to show us his project, something that we had all never seen before.
Yep.
He was ready for us to work on it, and we all worked on it, had a blast. Dustin did not end up getting it. He will. It'll happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you could just tell that he was super, super excited and super happy to have his buddies at his boulder that he showed us. And it's just really cool. It's cool to see that. And a lot of times when you're in a group of people with your climbing buddies, you want to be the person everybody's, cheering on their project, and you want people to be throwing pads for you and yelling and hooting and hollering and doing all this stuff, but you can't always be the person in the spotlight.
Right.
And I also realized that because I went out climbing with Ryan Copeland one day, and he's super strong.
Mm-hmm.
And he was getting on all this stuff, and he had some friends that were not as strong as him. And he had all these projects that he wanted to do. Well, when it came time for them to climb, he was throwing pads and cheering them on twice as hard as they were him.
Yeah.
So it was really cool.
Yeah, I think reciprocating that back to your partners is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And it just boosts the morale of the whole party. It just makes the whole day go better.
Everybody climbs a little bit better usually, and
I think in a situation like with you and Connor, or with you and your girlfriend Jessie, or whatever, where you're taking on some of the, you're invested in their climbing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel the same thing when I'm out with Annalisa, or with people I've worked with in the past, where I have some investment into their climbing. So I'm putting energy into what they're doing. I'm stoked to either be taking cool photos for them, or, I get excited to see them work on problems, and then I get even more excited to see them send, and a lot of times I'm more stoked for them than I am for myself. Mm-hmm. I definitely tend to have this like, oh, I just finished it, let's move on to the next thing, but I'm like on a high all day when I see somebody else try really hard and send their project.
Yep. Like Jessie, she did her first V4, like her first day at Rocktown. She just came off of a knee injury.
Oh, hell yeah.
Had not been in the climbing gym for like 2 months.
Yep.
Straight off the couch, sends her first V4. I would not have cared if I had done nothing harder than V1 that whole trip, because Jessie did her first V4, and she's been hard after it for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool. She just did her first V3 this spring, past spring.
Nice.
So a year ago almost.
She's crushing.
And she's getting it. She's getting after it. So it was really cool to see. And like when Connor would do one of his projects, I would sit under with him for an hour or two like all the time. Just watch him fall off of moves that he had done 100 times before.
Yeah.
Just get frustrated. You get to see that whole process, and then it's rewarding for both of you when you're out there and you're actually with them, seeing them invest all that time and effort into something.
Yeah, go through that whole range of emotions and frustrations and, joy and, the whole thing. It's so...
Punting chalkbots and
yeah, no doubt, man.
The
The whole range of human emotions happens on these little 12-foot tall rocks.
And it's so dumb, but it's so cool.
Yeah.
There's nothing better.
Awesome. Well, cool, man. Thanks for sitting down with me. I really appreciate it. And I'm stoked for how your trip went, and I think you made all the right choices. I think that's tough to do. I look back at so many trips I've taken and wish I would have made different decisions about how I structured the trip or how I approached climbing on that trip. And I think you hit on a bunch of things, and it doesn't sound like it was an accident.
Nope.
So that's pretty cool.
Definitely worked out.
Yeah. Good job, man.
Can't wait to do it next year.
All right. Well, thanks, man.
Yep. Thank you.
I have full confidence that Tanner will get back and he'll do Salo's roof and he'll do the orb and, on to bigger and harder boulder problems. And I know that when he does that, he'll do it as a much better climber who moves the way he wants to move, and he'll be surrounded by the people that he's made connections with. And it takes a lot of us years to realize that those are the important parts of this sport, this lifestyle, the important parts of climbing. And Tanner learned all these things in a 5.5-week trip to Tennessee and Georgia. And that's what makes Tanner Wilson a not-so-average Joe. Thanks again for listening to our Not So Average series. We do this because we love it, and because we believe that everyone has a story worth telling. And these episodes take a ton of time to produce, and we want to deliver a good podcast to you guys, so any help you can give is hugely appreciated. Let us know how you like the new format on your social media, or in a review on iTunes, or by becoming a patron. You can like our page on Facebook, or follow us on Instagram at Power Company Climbing, and, well, you can tweet about us, but like my main dude, Nolly Simon, says,
"We don't tweet, we scream like eagles."
This time